Good morning. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our Shotsuki Hoyo service for June 2021, wherein we remember and commemorate those who have crossed over to the other shore. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Yasuko Worcester to read the June Shotsuki Hoyo names. When your loved one's name is called, please come forward and offer incense. And if you're at home, please put your hands in Gassho and recite Namo Amida Butsu. Let's welcome Mrs. Yasuko Worcester.
I read the names of the people passed away in the June. 以上です。
Thank you, Mrs. Yasuko Worcester, for reading the names. At this time, we'll have the reading of the three treasures found on page 8 of the Purple Service Book, and it will also be displayed on the screen. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandam. And now we'll have chanting led by Reverend Elaine Donlin, chanting Sambujo, found on page 24, followed by Jusei Ge on page 93. And they'll also be displayed on the screen.
as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Practice hall as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Respectfully call upon the Tathagata of the 10 directions to enter this practice hall as we joyfully offer flowers of welcome. Today, on the occasion of the Buddhist Church of San Francisco's June Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial, we have reverently come before Amida Buddha with gratitude for the all-inclusive wisdom and compassion that is Amida Buddha. May the light of wisdom illuminate our hearts and minds to awaken us to our self-concern, and by this insight stir us to strive for a life of deeper understanding. May the life of compassion warm an innate humanity in our hearts, that we may truly appreciate and respect the intrinsic value and dignity of all beings. And may the paramitas of generosity, morality, patience, effort, contemplation, and wisdom teach us the essential bodhisattva way of life. It is with gratitude we say, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo
We have a special guest speaker this morning, Reverend Landon Yamaoka. And so before he comes up here, we'd like to tell you a little bit of something about him. From 2005 to the present, Reverend Yamaoka has been an assistant Dharma school teacher and a head or company teacher, co-teacher, and a junior YBA advisor for the majority of his time. He's been a part of the college YBA group, YLTD, YABA, and Techno Buddha, and has helped run and plan some of these groups' conferences. He attended the Institute of Buddhist Studies in the Master of Divinity program and doing a dual track with Shin Ministry and Buddhist chaplaincy. And that's where I first met Landon. I just want to let you know that he was so welcoming my first day there as a student, and I really appreciate how kind he was. The Reverend Landon was an educational counselor and then life skill counselor for a drug rehab group home that took youth out of juvenile hall to rehabilitate and teach about healthy living. He's worked in San Francisco, Japantown at JCYC in multiple programs: high school leadership development, middle school and high school prevention programs, teen summer camp coordinator, and worked on a grant cultivating leadership and organization with college clubs while creating awareness about the Japanese experiences in the incarceration camps. He's also a case manager for adults who had developmental disabilities as a living skills instructor, and also has done some employment counseling. So I'm very happy to welcome Reverend Landon Yamaoka.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you please join me in Gassho? The light of purity is without compare. When a person encounters this light, all bonds of karma fall away. So take refuge in Amida, the ultimate shelter. Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning. So you might have to excuse me. I am on a new allergy medicine because where I go has run out and they have not gotten it back. So I think I'm processing through the changes of taking a new allergy medicine. But good morning, and I hope you all are doing well today. I'd really like to thank all of you for the opportunity to be able to speak to you all today. So when Adam Sensei invited me to speak here, I was actually really excited for the monthly Memorial Shotsuki Hoyo service because it's really due to the San Francisco Buddhist temple and many causes and conditions that I actually got my interest in Jodo Shinshu. So my Dharma talk is about the Gosandai, but I'd like to share, if it's okay, just a little bit about my story on how I got to be here today, because again, it has a lot to do with your temple. So growing up, I had no idea what I wanted to do in high school, after high school, what I was going to do in college. But because my parents made me go to college, the University of Arizona had a really good anthropology program. If you don't know what that is, it's the study of humans. And I focused on human culture in my major. And I also minored in sociology because I wanted to understand how people worked, how the universe worked, and I wanted to learn something about that if I had to be in school anyway. So also, I have some pretty severe learning disabilities, and I didn't know that till later in life. So this college, University of Arizona, also had, at the time, the #1 learning disability program in the country, and so I was placed into that. So due to this, I took some tests, and it showed that this person would not succeed taking certain classes, specifically foreign language classes, and for anthropology, that's a key part of your curriculum, but they said because of these disabilities, we'll let you take a replacement class. So I got to choose anywhere in the world, and I chose East Asia as a focus because I wanted to know more about Japan. And just by chance, I signed up for a religious studies class on Japanese religion, where Jodo Shinshu was one of the things that we were going to study. So I show up to this class, and the teacher says, "Who knows what Zen Buddhism is?" Assuming most of you know what Zen is, right? Probably. So then the teacher says, "Who knows what Shinto is?" Raise our hands, assuming some of you also know what Shinto is. And then the teacher says, "Okay, and who knows what Jodo Shinshu is?" So I put my hand up, and I look around, and no one's raising their hand, so I kind of put it down because I was kind of feeling embarrassed. And the teacher goes, "You, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area." And he's like, "Oh, okay, can I ask what your ethnicity is?" And I said, "Oh, I'm Japanese American." And he's like, "Great. Did you know that your religion is huge in Japan?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, this guy's going to know all the answers in the class for the Jodo Shinshu section." And so I go home, I call my mom, and I just want to make sure. I don't know if my mom remembers that she's sitting over there. Mom, I just want to double check. We are Jodo Shinshu, right? And she says, yeah, of course, why? I said, oh, it's going to be a third of this class I'm taking. And she said, oh, that'll be good because you'll know something about it. And of course, while I'm doing the homework, absolutely nothing. I knew nothing about what the teacher's teaching us. I'm looking at these readings like, well, I'm supposed to be Jodo Shinshu, but how come I don't know this? So this is where your temple comes in. So every Christmas and summer vacation, my mom would say, okay, it's time to go to church. You're going to go with me to San Francisco, and we're going to visit a Biko Sensei. You need to hear at least one Dharma talk while you're home for vacation. I didn't really want to go, but I really liked a Biko Sensei, so I was like, okay, well, I guess I can cut my partying down early and we'll go up. And so I meet Sensei and I ask, hey, so I took this class and I knew absolutely nothing about what this teacher was talking about, assuming he has a PhD. He knows the stuff about Jodo Shinshu. And Abiko Sensei was very kind, and he said, I have some books that I'd like to give to you. So he gave me 3, but this was the first book he told me to read. He said, this book will probably interest you. I know you can't read it. It's called The Evil Person, Essays on Shin Buddhism by Suichi Maeda, and it's been translated by Nobuo Haneda. So it's actually because of this book that after reading it, I still didn't really know what Jodo Shinshu was, but it set the precedent for me wanting to know a little bit more about what our religion is. So thanks to the temple, thanks to Abiko Sensei, a lot of causes and conditions, I definitely have a very big debt of gratitude towards your temple, because if not for you, I definitely wouldn't be standing here today. So I know when I was introduced, it was said that I spoke at a drug rehab. So I actually used some ideas, from this book loosely, not teaching Buddhism specifically, but ideas about it to help some of the children that were going through hard times maybe see a different perspective that could be presented to them. Through our conversations, one person in particular who was a pretty rough kid actually started to change over time, and we could see this person trying to leave what they had done in the past behind and try to become a new person. So when I did case management with people with developmental disabilities, I tried to further this idea of how can we bring maybe some Buddhist ideas, not specifically teaching or propagating or trying to convert people, just to use Buddhist ideas to help someone who's really going through it find a different perspective just so it can be implanted. I think what I started to see were some of my clients would start to have these little aha moments. It was slow, it took a lot of time. But before we could make any really big progress in our work together, there had to be something that changed. And I like to look at it as like this light at the end of the tunnel that we all hope for when we're working with people can be related to maybe the light at the end of the tunnel when we're thinking about our own connection to Amida Buddha. That's really important, and yet I think to get there, we need lots of these little small interactions to maybe expand our minds, to be ready to accept or be open to feeling maybe there's something of a grander concept. So the Gosanda I used is from the 7th of the Jodo Wasan, which is chanted after Shoshinge, and we hear Master Shinran reflecting on Amida Buddha's light of purity and that nothing else compares to this. So Shinran Shonin is telling us that when we encounter this light, our own bonds of karma fall behind, and so we are being told or urged to take refuge in Amida Buddha, as this is the ultimate form of shelter for all of us. So had you asked me this as a youth, or I read it as a youth, or someone in a Dharma talk said something about this, it would not have made any sense to me. I actually don't like to admit this, but I will. I thought Amida Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha were just 2 different translations of how to say the Buddha. I know that there's a difference now. But thanks to this book, The Evil Person, and the idea of the Akunin, this started, I guess, my own appreciation for Jodo Shinshu, because I started to eventually see myself as one of these Akunin. I know evil is kind of a loaded term. Maybe we've directly or indirectly been taught growing up in the West, with maybe some Judeo-Christian influences, that there's this idea of inherent evil. And I want to make sure that everyone here knows this is not what the term is inferring. A minister who I won't name, just in case they didn't want me to share this, specifically told me that he believed the translation should be one who cannot be saved. So I appreciate that translation, but I don't think the words really work at face value, especially if the person you're telling that to does not understand some of the doctrinal aspects of Jodo Shinshu. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't know that Amida's light is liberating all beings. So you might think at first that these Akunin are inherently evil. But with this translation, there was an understanding that I knew at least something about Jodo Shinshu to understand that there's a deeper meaning behind this. In Shin, there is no precedent for anyone to be left behind from Amida's light. So this beginning quote specifically states, "The light of purity is without compare." And this shows that the light and compassion from Amida is transformative. So even these Akunin are grasped. So my minister, I think I can call him my friend's definition, just maybe means, in another way of saying it, one cannot save themselves, at least within regard to the Jodo Shinshu tradition. So as someone who sees themselves as an evil person, the idea of light that is so pure is great, and it is great no matter how imperfect that I might be. And if I can come to an understanding of why I'm provided this ultimate light, and then I get shelter, this has some sort of sense of relief for me. It's holistic. I think it's healing. Of course, coming to an understanding like this took a really long time, years, like decade, at least a decade. So the Gosandai talks about bonds of karma. And it makes me think of the word unsavable again. And again, this is through my own abilities, not because anyone's forsaken in Amida Buddha's eyes. And these bonds of karma fall away due to what Amida is giving to us. I really appreciate Jodo Shinshu, as this shift in Buddhist ideology is important because I am not required to be good enough for Amida's infinite compassion. But I do need to start to recognize and appreciate this ultimate compassion, which requires, I think, at least for me, to learn over time what compassion really is. So in the last several months, I've known several people who've passed away, and 2 of them are Jodo Shinshu. So obviously, I wanted to try to help, so I went to the family to console the bereaved. I think, hopefully, I think at least, I don't know if other people would agree with this, that thanks to my work and educational experience, I feel like I'm able to talk to people about some pretty heavy stuff, and I try to utilize points from what I learned through direct work experience or trainings to hopefully say something that is comforting to the people who've lost a loved one. I don't know how much good that I might be doing, but I hope at least at the least amount of doing something right, that I can at least go and plant some seeds so these family members can hopefully reflect on what we talked about and at a later time get some sort of closure from the things that we talked about. I have to admit, I'm not very proficient in the Shin doctrine, but I like to try to loosely and gently provide possibilities of things to consider. As in my experience at work, people need to be slowly introduced to new ideas or considerations. So last weekend I was with a friend, and his father had passed away, and the dad took care of me when I was little, taught me how to shoot guns, how to go fly fishing, and it was always very patient with me. And my friend and his father were not Buddhist, but when I was talking to my friend, trying to console him, I wanted to present an idea of healing through him and his father's past interactions. So my friend said it had been 2 or 3 months and the father had passed. He said that he was doing better, but admitted that, in this time period, he'd had some ups and downs and had gone through some rough periods. So I mentioned knowing that he himself had had some pretty difficult life experiences. So I asked him, when you reflect on these harder things that you've gone through, do you only remember the bad, or over time, do these reflections also provide you some insight to your present day life as well? So we discussed his father's passing and how a lot of the stuff in his house reminded him of those memories that they had shared, and that would obviously bring up some sadness. But also we talked about how those activities in the past, when he reflected on them, helped sustain and heal him as he was going through some hard times. So our conversation excluded any idea of the other, And my friend was not specifically asking me, as a religious person, to talk about religion or perhaps his relationship that he might have with God. But when I think about it, I think, at least I believe, that I can see some connection to the other. And maybe this is a stretch, but maybe what reminds him of his father is something that still sustains and heals him. There's still a relationship that is connecting them together, and I know that this is a stretch. But what I hope is that when my friend is able to remember something positive about the relationship, that I, as a Jodo Shinshu minister, could make a connection to maybe this is an aspect of this person encountering the light, versus only feeling the pain that he's been going through. So I'd like to ask all of you, how do we encounter the light of Amida Buddha? How do we understand this interaction? I believe to describe this answer would be very difficult, as I believe answers would vary person to person. I think people need to feel hope, and perhaps through our daily interpersonal interactions, we can start to feel or understand aspects of this light. And right off the bat, the first time you hear about it, maybe it's hard to imagine what this relationship could be or feel like. And yet, I think we can at least all look back on our past where we've had some sort of connection or interaction with someone that something about what was said or done just kind of felt right. So I'll admit, at a young age, I did not feel connected with Amida Buddha. I could not have cared much about Amida Buddha. But thanks to the relationships that I've had, I've learned to appreciate kindness and compassion. And I think it's through recognizing actions or feelings that I've observed that help me try to attempt to understand better today what that light might mean for me. Towards the end of the Wasan that I used, it talks about all bonds of karma fall away. And again, in context, this is thanks to our encounter of the light from Amida Buddha. So in my understanding of Shin, it would be our egos, our wants, our needs that are really hindering our daily lives. So I think we all can admit that at some point in our life, we've felt loss and pain. And for me at least, my ego led to wanting to maybe put up a wall as so I wouldn't have to feel so bad about all these things. I think it's because of this, and I have these types of issues, that this is why I specifically need this light of purity, because it's coming from outside of me. And it's coming from the outside, and yet it's given freely to me. If I look at if I'm looking at karma as ripples of causes and effect, I would argue that I learn from life or my interactions with others how not to act appropriately as a really compassionate person. And yet, because of this book that I received, the idea of evil spoke to me, and I could see myself perhaps in a clearer picture. And of course, there's still the other side of it where I have people who showed me to do something better. And I think over time, all these little connections got me to be in a place where I wanted to come back to temple. I wanted to learn more about Jodo Shinshu. It just had to start very slowly at first. So again, something like a Biko Sensei, being at the San Jose Buddhist Temple and getting to know my father's side of the family, coming to Palo Alto, dealing with me as a pretty bad kid, and then coming here, or I come back to here to see him and he gives me this book. Perhaps it's things like Kobata Sensei was at my grandfather's funeral and I had no idea who he was. And then when I was in Japantown, when I was on a lunch break, he saw me and we were talking, and over time I realized that he was trying to make me understand that he was a family member of mine, and I didn't know that. And then he goes, well, why did you think I was at your grandfather's funeral? I was like, I had no idea. I just thought you were a priest coming to pay your respects. But karma has ripple effects. It can be good, it can be bad. But again, I think we need these interactions to kind of see ourselves and to learn something better about the world as well. Shinran talks about this idea of karma falling away. And I think that might come off maybe perhaps in a negative sense. But again, it's because the light is negating something, right? But I'd also like to ask you to consider if it could be viewed as a transformative process as well. What ties us to the earth sets the precedent for us to be healed, at least in the Jodo Shinshu Shin context of what Amida Buddha does for all of us. Like with my friend and his father, the memories that bring sorrow are also tied to special memories that they shared. So perhaps in a more Shin precedent, I think at least for me, what I felt wrong about myself was also the reason that I decided, maybe I decided, that I should also go back to temple to try to understand why I have this negative karma, and yet Amida Buddha would still have compassion for someone like me. So I guess in the last 4 or 5 months, I've had to do a couple pillow services, and that's obviously not an easy thing to do. The first one was for a friend that I grew up with at the temple. We actually weren't very close as children, but got very close in our adult years because of the conference Techno-Buddha that happens at the Jodo Shinshu Center. Our Sunday school started off pretty big, and then every year, kids go off, do different things, or don't come back to temple. And so at some point, there's not that many of us. And I remember my friend, I always thought that she was one of the cool kids, and yet she was always very kind to me. So I was checking in with her mother a couple of days before her final viewing, and the mother asked, what is the importance of a pillow service? Her mom had not requested one from our temple, and so I said, well, I feel like they're really important for the family to have a ritual, so it kind of can mark the start of an aspect of healing. So we talk about some Shin doctrine, what it means, like the light from Amida. Amida's taking all of us in no matter what, whether we had the pillow service or not. But then she asks, and this is like 11:30 on a Friday night, and this service is supposed to happen on an early Monday morning. Well, do you think it's too late to ask for one? And I said, well, I'm going to have to check in with the head minister because I'm not supposed to be doing these. But of course, since she didn't ask, the minister had already scheduled some stuff. So I kind of at the last minute, I was thrown into this. I'll admit it was pretty hard, A, because I wasn't really sure I knew what I was doing, but also because I had to do it for someone that I was friends with through our Techno-Buddha conference. There was other challenges. I had to make sure that I stayed pretty true to Shin religious doctrine, especially because I didn't know how knowledgeable her family members were about Jodo Shinshu. But I also wanted to ensure that all of her friend group, who I knew were not Jodo Shinshu, would also still be able to take something away from it. In writing this talk, I realized how important her kindness was for me, because had she not been friendly with me as a kid, would I have stayed around in Sunday school? Maybe, maybe not. What I was able to reflect on in our service, or in the service, was that as adults we had these really deep conversations, and it made me feel good about this very small connection we had in Dharma school, because eventually that led us to, as adults, talking about life and Jodo Shinshu. I would say this is our bond of karma, and of course these ties are of great importance because I think our karmic relationship eventually allowed us to be able to be in a place, even though for maybe a brief period of time, to share the Dharma together. So the last pillow service I had to do was, well, I didn't do it, I assisted with it, was for my grandmother. So she passed away a little over a month ago. We were supposed to celebrate her birthday this weekend, but unfortunately she passed before we could get together. So my grandmother and I actually never had any very deep conversations about life, but the memories that I do recall were watching as many cartoons as I wanted as a kid. They would always give me candy from this little thing they had on the walkway when you walked in, and getting to play with all the toys that were kept specifically for just my grandparents' house. I remember the top ramen that she used to cook for me, and as an adult, watching action movies and westerns with her, and then eventually introducing to her to other genres of movies, like sci-fi and comedy movies, which I guess she'd never seen before we started watching them. I believe, looking back at my childhood, I think I can see how maybe I was being shown, maybe subconsciously taught through just our daily interactions, what compassion and patience might look like. I think instances like this start us again to help, in a small sense, learn at a young age how we can grow up to make some understanding of the jump to a compassion from a grandmother to a grandchild, to the compassion and light that Amida Buddha has for all of us. So in the karmic sense of cause and effect, she and my grandfather were members at San Jose, and like I said, that's how they got to know Abiko Sensei, and then Abiko Sensei comes to Palo Alto, and then comes here, and I get this book, and I think that if we're in a good place, and we're not overly stressed out, we're not overly sad, we can start to see and recognize these little interactions with people, and we can see how they grow and help us get to different places that maybe on our own we would not have been able to get to. The light of purity from Amida is something that we need to have an understanding of and a relationship with, and yet I think, or I believe, as we grow and are able to be more open to it, it can help us have more of a grounded sense of our own selves. And I think it's at that point we can have maybe a better understanding or appreciation of how prolific our religious ideologies are. Our encounters with people set the precedent, maybe, at least for me, to come back to the temple to hear the Dharma. And what we learn from these people, hopefully enough seeds are planted so that we can all become good enough or able or stable enough to be in a place to receive these teachings, and then we can hopefully open ourselves up to the light and compassion that Amida is providing for all of us. This light is something that is beyond human comprehension. And I believe through our connections with other people, we learn from, again, maybe these little small encounters of kindness. So hopefully at some point our egos can start to shrink, our hearts can be more open, and then we can get to a better understanding of how we are able to receive this ultimate shelter. I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to be here to share a little bit with you today and talk about my own journey into Jodo Shinshu. And again, because I think it really started because of the ties that I had here. Without this temple, without the ministers, I don't know if my eyes would have been opened enough to really want to appreciate and understand and learn about our teachings. I hope that something about this talk was relatable to all of you, and maybe today, tomorrow, at some time in this week, you're able to be in a place to reflect back on your own karmic encounters, and perhaps that might lead you to a new understanding of the Dharma and to understand how Amida's light is able to reach and sustain all of you. If you wouldn't mind joining me again in Kansho. The light of purity is without compare. When a person encounters this light, all bonds of karma fall away, so take refuge in Amida, the ultimate shelter. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Dubs. Namo Dubs. Namo Dubs. Namo Dubs. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Landon Yamaoka, for your Dharma talk. It's given us much to think about. Today, our Gatha is Asa no Uta, found on page 232 of the Purple Service Book. It'll also be displayed on the screens. If you're able to, please stand. And we'll be accompanied by Mrs. Masaye Abiko, Masaye Abiko on the organ. Today's closing reading is a short passage from Call of the Infinite, The Way of Shin Buddhism, written by Reverend John Paraskevapopoulos. The primal vow is such that it accepts ordinary people for what they are, foolish and fractious beings with no hope of saving themselves. It does not demand moral or intellectual qualifications. This is the meaning of unconditional compassion. All it asks is that we admit the primal vow into our lives and let it do its work of transforming our awareness. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida. We'd like to express our appreciation for those who participated in this morning's service. I'd like to thank Reverend Landon Yamaoka for his Dharma talk, and also Reverend Elaine Donlin for chanting. We'd like to thank Mrs. Yasuko Worcester for reading of the names, and also Mrs. Misaye Abiko for playing the organ. And of course, our technical wizard, Kevin Yoza, for making sure that the Zoom and the service is recorded. Thanks to everyone. Are there any announcements? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to, this feels like deja vu. I want to apologize again. I realized I chanted the wrong chant again. I had copied last month's Shotsuki Hoyo program, and I knew in my mind I wanted to chant Junirai, but I didn't change it. So I apologize, especially to Kevin, who is probably furiously trying to find the chant for our folks at home that are watching on Zoom. So my apologies to all of you. I'm really glad how you embrace impermanence and change, and just jumped right in at some point. So thank you. And again, I apologize. I will be more mindful.
I was actually quite pleased at how quickly everyone switched over to Junirai. See, one announcement is that next Sunday we'll have our Sangha service with Reverend Henry Adams, and we invite everyone to join us. And we also have our Wednesday evening meditation group meeting every Wednesdays, 6:30 in the evening. It's a Zoom meeting, so if you'd like to join us, just contact the office and we'll send you the Zoom link. We also have our book club meeting every other week, and we'll be meeting this Tuesday. We're meeting this Thursday at 1:30, and we're reading a book by D.T. Suzuki called Mysticism, Christian and Buddhist Perspectives. So you're welcome to join us for that. Again, contact the office, we'll send you the Zoom meeting. Are there any additional announcements?
Good morning. Let's see, this Saturday is the Eagle Scout Court of Honor ceremony, and it's their first time they'll be doing it in person in a few years, as understandably. Because they have a limited capacity. Oh, they're going to have it in the gym, but they're going to limit it to family and friends. But the rest of us are welcome to watch it on Zoom. So it'll be on Zoom, and it'll be the same Zoom link as these services. So that's next Saturday at 6 o'clock. And two other things. This afternoon, after the BWA meeting, there's going to be a Obon planning meeting. Most things are already in progress, but it's just kind of to check in and to see where we are. So that's later on this afternoon after the BWA meeting, if you'd like to join us. Then next Sunday is the June Board of Directors meeting at 1 o'clock. As always, everyone's welcome to attend and participate in discussions. That's the same, we use the same Zoom link for all the Board of Directors meetings. So if you'd like the link, you can ask any of us, any of the board members. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other announcements? So this concludes this morning's June Shotsuki Hoyo service. Thank you for joining us. Please stay safe and healthy. And let's close the Nambutsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandab, namandab, namandab. Thank you everyone for being here.